Alrighty. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for November 26, 2012. If you could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. All right, first item on the agenda tonight is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes that need to be made to the agenda?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item is the approval of the minutes for the October 22nd, 2012 meeting. Are there any changes that need to be, that anyone saw that needs to be made to those minutes? Seeing none.
Mr. Chair, move for approval.
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
One abstention.
Moving on, we have two public hearings this evening. First one is variance number 2012-05 by Dan and Christy Marvin. This is located on 6921 Beach Road. This is a request for a permit, a shoreline setback for an in-ground pool of 56 feet 10 inches from the ordinary high water level of Bryant Lake. And city code requires a 100-foot setback from the original high water level. There are three other permit requests as part of this variance request, which are all related to the being within the 100-foot setback level of the original high water level. That being said, the project proponent is here this evening. We could please step forward and tell us a little bit about what you're requesting. You can just state your name, spell your last name, and give your address for
Peter
safety.
S. Cookie, ESKUCHE. I'm the architect for the client. The client is present.
Okay.
Basically, there's an existing residence on the site now, and your documents should show where that existing residence is relative to the building area that's conforming as of this day. The proposal is to remove the non-conforming residence and move the new residence back about 30 feet into the conforming zone. And so the residence is completely within conforming zone of setbacks and is within the hardcover allowance. However, in moving the house into that zone, it becomes impossible to put the pool anywhere within that same setback. So they are proposing to put the pool between the house and the lake.
Excuse me, sir, could I have you just adjust the microphone there so we can speak in the microphone? We're having a little trouble hearing you.
You're kind of short.
Better?
Hello?
I think it just need to be angled a little bit differently.
All right.
That's
Is that good?
Yeah. You're good, yeah.
All right. So I'm not sure if you heard any of that.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I think it's for recording purposes, if you could just kind of...
Sure. And so to continue, what we're doing is proposing to build a new residence, 100% conforming within the current building zoning laws of setbacks. However, the existing residence, which is it's about 60 feet from the shoreline, we'd like to continue that underground only to connect to the boathouse, as well as propose the pool between the house and the lake, which puts the pool setback at about 60 feet, or 56 foot 10. We did reduce the original size of the pool that they wanted, and I believe the length, that's actually 19 by 36. It was originally 20 by 40, so we thought that a little bit smaller pool would encroach less. And also, as a result of the application, we learned that we had proposed an arbor structure, and that arbor structure is within that setback as well. So there's two columns and some cedar beams above the arbor. They're about 8 feet off of grade, and that structure actually meets existing grade. I'm not sure I can even explain this without showing somebody, but the arbor structure isn't, I'd say it's about 16 by 16 feet square.
If you actually, if you want to, we have a projector on the desk right over here. That, I don't know, if John could probably point you in the right direction. If you just want to step around the side here and kind of show everybody what you're talking about.
Go around. Just switch it from behind.
Oh, yeah, switch on.
You kind of switch it from behind. Turn it.
No luck.
Turn the TV on. You should turn the TV on. Just turn the monitor on, Regina.
Oh, there we go.
Should be working now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Right. So this.
There we go. Is the microphone turned on there? Is there a microphone switch over there? Or?
All right, it's working. I just have to
There
talk
we go.
closer. Super. All right, so if you can see, there is a dashed rectangle here. That is the conforming setback, this dashed line here. The existing house is actually here, quite a bit closer to the lake. And so what we're doing is proposing the new residence within that dashed line. But the pool then, so the new residence is completely within that dash line, but then the pool would be closer to the lake because, as you can see, for their family of 7, what we've proposed would not allow for any pool to fit in this setback line. It's pretty much just house. It just fills the buildable area. And then the arbor structure right here is on center with the pool. So that setback is actually 68 feet from the water. And the pool setback is 56 foot 10 from the water. And that's basically what we're applying for.
All right. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, we'll get back to you. Regina, if you can take us through the staff report.
Members of the Planning Commission. Technical difficulties here, sorry. The proposed variance meets the 3-part test for practical difficulties, including reasonable use, unique circumstances, neighborhood character, and the findings that you see on are listed in Exhibit C of the staff report. Staff recommends approval according to those findings and conditions. If you need me to explain anything or answer any questions, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for city staff or the project proponent at this time? Jacob?
Yeah, what would generally be the risks with having the pool too close to the lake and, I don't know, the high water mark, something occurring? I know it's not a residence, so if something happened, really what are we talking about here?
It's something that would be evaluated by our building department and the engineering that they provide. The architect would be required to provide that information to ensure that it does meet safety standards. Risks that would be involved with any pool, there could possibly be damage.
Would there be any issues with like erosion with the digging? I mean, I'm obviously not an engineer or anything like that, but
I would say no more than what's existing right now.
Okay.
It's further from the lake than any existing structure.
Okay. Thank you.
Travis?
Yeah, this question might be able to be responded by the project proponent and perhaps staff. The existing tunnel underneath and the proposed new extension of the tunnel, how close in elevation does that come to the ordinary high water level or the underground water table?
You can just step up here if you'd like.
The boathouse is actually, that has the water, I'm sorry, the lowest floor level at, that's not correct, 855.03, and ordinary high water is 852.6. So we were timing out with the boathouse floor, so it wouldn't be any higher or lower than the boathouse is already. I'm not sure if that helps.
Yeah, I think it does. There was no topography overlay on these surveys here, so I was just trying to find out. So the existing tunnel and the new projected tunnel, the floor elevation is not going to be any further lower than that 855 mark.
Correct.
Is that something that engineering that you guys had addressed and were acceptable with that? I'm just worried about the long-term sustainability of that being closer, 9 feet closer then again.
Well, it's an existing condition, so I'm not sure. I think as long as, the DNR regulations, I think, require you can't build, anywhere near that ordinary high water level, but they're 3 feet above. I don't, if they've got an existing structure, it's probably been there a while. I don't know.
Well, that's I think what I was getting at is if there, since it is existing, if there are new DNR regulations, but if there aren't, then it's acceptable. I was just curious. I have no problem with it, but I'm just curious.
I don't know. I mean, normally in a situation where they rebuild a house, they have to meet current DNR regulations, so I don't know if the proponent has checked that or not. So
I was just checking with my assistant, Adam, and we believe that is actually for any new proposal, that's actually the lowest floor as well. So, I'd have to verify that, but we're not lower than the existing structure.
If I might add, the DNR did receive a copy of the plans, and they didn't have any comments to bring forward.
Any further questions for the project proponent? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. No questions for staff either? We're pretty comfortable with this all around? Thank you. As this is a public hearing, is there anybody in the audience that would like to comment on this project? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, move to close the public hearing.
Second.
First, second, all in favor? Aye.
Move to recommend approval of final order 2012-05.
Second.
First, second, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Continue with your project. Thank you. Next public hearing is Riley Views at location 9400 Lake Riley Road and 18600 and 18700 Pioneer Trail. This is a request for a planned unit development concept review on 13.4 acres, a planned unit development district review with waivers on 13.4 acres, a zoning district change from rural to R1-9.5 on 13.4 acres, and a preliminary plat of 13.4 acres into 28 lots, 2 outlots, and road right-of-way. I see the project proponent is already passing out materials.
Thank you, staff. My name is Scott Carlston. I'm Eden Prairie resident, here to bring this project in front of you tonight. I have handouts here, as I understood that the electronics were down, so instead of a PowerPoint, I just put a very, very short packet presentation in here for you. This is my company, Hunter Emerson. You can see the existing conditions there on the second page is what's currently there. It's the abandoned garage that's left on site that'll need to be cleaned up and trash removed out of there as well. The following page shows an overview of the location of the property. Right along Pioneer Trail on one side, and the loose line, or LRT, I guess, whatever you want to call it, on their side. Living here, we always call it the loose line, but I think it is the LRT. I see this development, as we move forward, is going to progress similar to what we did across the street in Stonegate. As you turn the page, you'll see some of the housing types and what I would expect to see in the development. And I'm sorry if I'm a little out of order here, you guys. I just put a little bio on myself, the developments we've done here in Eden Prairie. If you have questions about our abilities and what the development will look like. I'm very proud of the Stonegate neighborhood, which is directly across the street. I've also enclosed a map in here of the location of some of the projects. And the reason I'm on the page now where I actually have the Stonegate development, and the reason I took that angle is I wanted to give a flavor of what I think the Stonegate folks could expect to see look in the opposite direction. I know some residents are here tonight, and I'm happy to see them, and I think we want to reassure them that indeed we're going to have a nice residential neighborhood. In today's world, I think you'll see something that will be very attractive. I want to emphasize the Riley Lake Park, the access to the park, the trails, and then actually the development is 28 lots. There's a reason for a couple of PUD waivers and what we're looking for. It's kind of pinched between Pioneer Trail and the LRT. It's one length cul-de-sac. We originally had a second entrance coming out of the project. Talking with staff and with the county, we really believe the safest way is just to extend the cul-de-sac and just have one main entrance in and one out. I think for safety reasons it'll make for a better neighborhood. And then if you noticed on the lot size, it's actually incorrect. That's a bit high. I just found out tonight because of the setbacks from Riley Creek. It's a little less than that. With that, any questions that you may have for me, I'd be happy to share with you. And the one last item, if I could, where I put traffic study there, I put an arrow on there, and that is an area where came into question is will cars back up coming out to Pioneer Trail or not? I hadn't seen any backup except for back in the years when they were parking all the trailers from the parking ramp with the boats. They used to park them along Pioneer Trail. And I don't think they still do that, Charlie?
What's that?
They still park the cars down Pioneer Trail?
Further down, yeah.
So that's the only time I've seen real backup with that is when the lot gets full, which they're not supposed to be doing anyway after that. So with that being said, I look forward to bringing in a nice neighborhood to the community. Any questions I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carlson. If you have any questions, we'll get to you after we hear the staff report here. Thank you. Regina, do you want to take us through the staff report?
Thank you. As Scott mentioned, there are waivers that are requested as part of the subdivision approval, and one of the things that the developer is doing is they're dedicating two outlots for preservation of the creek corridor, for wetland preservation, as well as dedication of right-of-way for Pioneer Trail. City staff is in support of the proposal. There are a few changes that are required or recommended prior to City Council that I believe the applicant is currently working on, and staff recommends approval according to pages 3 and 4 of the staff report. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Regina. As this is a public hearing, if there are members of the audience that would like to speak to this project, is there anyone out here? Sir, if you'd like to step forward. Could you please state your name and spell your last name and give your address for city record?
My name is Paul Schenecker. I'm here on behalf of my father and my mother. They reside at 9450 Lakeland Terrace, which would be on the Lake Riley side of the LRT. they have two lots. If you see in your drawing, there's a lot shaped like a sharp arrow almost. It starts up big and gets smaller. And then the lot next door. Do you have the picture? Yeah. And my father and mother have lived there for 43 years. As a matter of fact, they owned this land years ago that he's developing and rented it to a farmer for $1 a month so that he could farm. And he brought fresh vegetables, so the good old days. And now the developing, Mr. Karlstad seems very reasonable, and we're not opposed to his development. The concern is that my parents have spent a long time trying to retain the privacy along that LRT, and what I spoke to Mr. Karlstad about would be if he'd be willing to have some arbor along his side of the LRT. I had suggested coniferous trees. He said those tend to get overwatered and can die. He's had experiences in developments where people overwater their lawns and they die. But he said like Colorado spruces, which also, I guess, fill out quite a bit. And he was fine with that because that was their biggest thing for the last 43 years. When we retire, let's have some privacy. And so I guess a request would just be that it be noted in the development plan, either as a specific condition or footnote, that since the developer has agreed with the concept, that there would be some type of arbor, be it Colorado spruce or pine, along those lot lines in the property there. And then, so that was one, just seeing somehow if we can get it noted. Not that his assurances aren't nice and we believe them, but it would be nice if it was noted elsewhere.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was, and I think I heard it addressed, and that is the wooded creek that runs around there. All the people in the neighborhood love that creek. It's got the deer, and occasionally you even see a wild turkey. So they really enjoy it, and they, of course, don't want it developed. It sounds as though the setbacks are 125 feet, and the developer views it as an asset for the new homeowners as well. So from what I can tell, and I'm not one that's great at reading these plans, he intends to retain and protect it. So I guess as long as you're sure he's doing that, then we're fine with that. So that would be the nature of our two requests. Just one, that somehow it would be memorialized or noted that he's going to put some trees along those lot lines. And the second would be just that creek area is protected, and I know all the neighbors in the area, that's a big one for them.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Schoenecker.
Schoenecker, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Carlson, I assume this is based on Mr. Schoenecker's comments that this is something you're amenable.
Yeah, I would be more than happy to do that. I met with them at the neighborhood meeting. We had a good chat about that. Obviously, any trees along the back property line will be left alone. And when it came to tree replacement, obviously that would be an area in which we would be happy to replace. I can work that out with Stu as far as the type of trees and the location of the trees. I would like to, if the staff is okay with it, in the areas where they're looking for privacy, I'd like the ability to bring in some bigger trees if possible, bigger than the 3-inch, maybe like 8, 10-inch trees, and get credit for those on the caliper inch replacement if possible. That way they could have instant gratification and more privacy for the residents.
Is there any member of the city staff that can speak to this as well, if it's a reasonable request?
Something that Scott will have to show on the revised plans prior to council and indicate the approved or the 10-foot height of the trees, for example, and the species of trees, so that when it does get approved, or if it does get approved through city council and it does get established in a development agreement, that when we go out on site we can verify that yes, that the trees that are shown on the plan are 10 feet, what's planted is 10 feet, and that's something that would meet our requirements and meet the plan. So we're open to that, sure.
And presumably the preservation of the creek area would also be incorporated in part of the revised plans as well?
That actually is shown
okay.
as a dedicated outlot to the city for preservation.
Okay. Thank you very much. At this point, are there any questions commissioners have for city staff or project proponent? Jake?
I have one. Maybe if you could walk us through the need for each of the waivers. I just know in the past we've had some developments I think you're aware too, where a lot of waivers come through, and the city council obviously isn't fond of developments with, 10s, 20s, 30 waivers if they're not absolutely necessary.
Get that? Let me turn it over. Is it upside down on the model?
Yeah.
There we go.
Sure. The first waiver is the cul-de-sac length of 1,650 feet.
If I may introduce Nate Herman. Nate is my engineer on site and the design engineer of the project.
You?
Can you hold on a second?
Trying to get a less glossy image there.
Sorry. This is what it doesn't have the outlets. So first of all, we had a road that was stubbed out here. We had some neighbors that had come. Can everyone see that? Okay. That had tied into the Crestwood neighborhood. The neighbors, the Wheelers, came to the meeting. Were concerned about, about the traffic coming through here being dangerous. As we all know, that hairpin turn in Eden Prairie is one of the, probably the worst roads around this corner up by Ingram's property. So we actually put this future, when they improve Pioneer Trail, we've given up right away. We've kept a wide trail in there. Could be used for emergency, but in this case, we've overextended the 500-foot length of cul-de-sac just out of security or precaution more than anything. The other thing that we had done is typical lots, these lots are shorter and thicker or narrower and deeper than atypical 13.5. We've got a mix of that. And so the areas in which it was shallower, we asked for the setback not as far back, so it's not sticking too far back or too far up front. It will consistent. Glad we did that.
Okay, so we covered what Scott was talking about was the lot depth less than 150 feet for properties adjacent to the railroad. That's primarily due to the fact that the geography of the geometry of the site being long and narrow and giving up the additional right-of-way to Pioneer Trail. We don't have the lot depths even available. So that's one reason the waiver was being requested. The same with just the pinching of the lots as far as requesting a front yard setback from 30 to 25 feet, just due to the buildable area and the depth of some of the lots. And then there's a corner lot less than 90 feet, and that is Lot 1, Block 1. And I believe the city requested an additional 7 feet of right-of-way. And so that was 90 feet at one point. That can be looked at again, but when we gave the extra right-of-way up along Riley Lake Road there, it went less than the 90 foot. And the cul-de-sac length was just primarily due to the second access. The second access went away because the site distance, the vertical site distance and the horizontal site distance, either way is well below Hennepin County's standards.
Jake, you good?
Yeah, no, thanks for the explanation. I guess from my standpoint, you may want to stay there because I may have more. But so the cul-de-sac piece, the whatever 1650, I think we're choosing that, right? Because we don't want. It could be like a long horseshoe where you come back out to Pioneer and there wouldn't even be a cul-de-sac, right? If we really wanted it to be that way.
Well, I think I can probably provide a little clarity on.
Yeah.
The plan initially showed a connection over onto Pioneer Trail. It's shown on your plan as it shows as a future. They looked at that. It would line up directly with Crestwood Terrace. That's what we would prefer, but the sight lines and the current geometry out there, or topography, there's a very steep crest of a hill just to the east of this intersection that has some sightline restrictions, and in order to correct that, you would have to probably reconstruct several hundred feet of Pioneer Trail, and we thought that was probably a little on the high side for a developer to do that. So what we agreed to was that we would allow the longer cul-de-sac now and plan to build that in the future. The developer will provide some financial security to get that piece built with the timing of Pioneer Trail. So we don't know when Pioneer Trail is going to be reconstructed. Could be 5-10 years from now. But when it does, we would anticipate that connection be built. And we have some conditions in the staff report that we would want forwarded to the council, as well as the developer's agreement that would tie that connection to a future date, or would tie the reality of that connection at a later date.
Okay, thanks. So from my standpoint on that one, we're making a safety decision, right? Because cul-de-sacs are supposed to only be 500 feet. Isn't that mostly a safety reason? So we're making a different safety decision. So I think that's fine.
I'm glad you brought the cul-de-sac up, because I was looking at it at a completely different angle than you were.
Oh, okay.
But I can address that when we get to it.
Yeah, so I was just going to march through each of these. And then, so the second one, the corner lot, frontage less than 90 feet, I thought seemed fine. And then the fourth one, lot depth less than 150 feet for properties which rear on a railroad, I thought fine. It's that third one that concerns me, is basically a front yard setback from 30 to 25 on every single lot, just in light of past experience. So I'm trying to be more helpful here than trying to work our way through this now.
Is there anything specific that bothers you the most about that?
Just from past experience dealing with these smaller developments where there's a number of variances, or waivers in this case, and there's not really a good rationale for them, just out of more convenience. It seems like the city council doesn't want to set a precedent and just allow all those. I mean, that's really it. I don't have any other, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. It's 5 feet, so.
If I may continue your thought there on the 30 to 25 feet, the way I see that, most of the structures to be built are on the north side of that street, and bringing it to 25 feet versus 30 would bring it further away from the lake and further away from that railway corridor. And getting it further away from both of those kind of protected areas I have no concern. I'm not certain if that is attributed to the southern. Is that 30 to 25 feet going to be all-encompassing, or is that just on the northern half of the northern side lots with the southern garages on the north side of Aubrey Court?
It is proposed for the whole development as far as as long as the south. It also pulls the rear of the yards away from Pioneer Trail.
Yeah. So I can kind of see a little bit of rationale in there. On the 30 to 25 feet, is it an average of about 25 feet, or is that exactly, are you putting that at a minimum as where you're going?
If I may, that was one thing that we talked about. Because of the site, it is a very narrow site, and with the extra right-of-way they're asking for from Pioneer Trail, it even narrows it more. And then we also have an extra right-of-way back on the LRT back here, so we're really squeezed, and that's really where it came from. We thought doing the 25 feet, I think it'll be consistent. That was the whole purpose, but there's not a magic number for that.
Well, it definitely is a better plan than having little driveways all stubbing off of Pioneer Trail. It definitely does look nice. I'd like to come back to Jacob's point that he raised, and that the long cul-de-sac, the 500 feet to 1,650 feet, I think it was. What was staff's idea or thought process on just keeping it as a long cul-de-sac, kind of thinking on if we just translated this street to the northeast corner of Dell Road and Pioneer Trail, just east a little ways to Frondell Court, it almost looks entirely the same layout with I think it's about 500 feet shorter on Frondell Court, the existing Frondell Court. What was staff's idea on traffic flow, utilizing that Aubrey Court as a staging area for the adjacent Riley Lake boat launch, and as well as maybe utilizing it as a western cut-through instead of a private residential street, as a western cut-through for traffic, traffic, putting a greater strain on the residents of that area if we had a connection there. I know it's not in, but there's a potential future connection. I'm just wanting to know if there was any concerns that have been raised on those.
I wouldn't say there would be a lot of concerns about cut-through traffic, but I think the premise is that any development that we see, we try to, if possible, and it makes sense and it's reasonable, we try to encourage and recommend 2 access points to any development. Anytime you end up with there's obviously a lot of cul-de-sacs that are 500 and some feet long that have limited amount of properties, maybe 4, 5, 6, properties on that cul-de-sac. But when you get 28 on a cul-de-sac, it's something happens anywhere in there, it becomes a difficult situation to try to get people out of there. So we are providing emergency access on the across from Crestwood Terrace as a temporary measure, and that will have some difficulties as well. But I just think it's good practice to provide 2 outlets in any development whenever reasonable and practical.
Will that traffic study probably bring up some of the concerns that I had with people parking or utilizing that as a nice little roundabout for their boat launching and because I can just see someone using that as a cut-through, potentially a cut-through, that future Crestwood Terrace as a cut-through for a stopped or backed-up stop sign, waiting for maybe eastbound traffic or eastbound turn traffic off of Riley Lake Road.
Well, it's possible, but I guess I don't see that as a.
Will the traffic study maybe bring that up, or is that just kind of a mute concern?
No, the traffic study is really just to look at the queuing length at Riley Lake Road as it approaches Pioneer Trail, to see if that intersection should be moved back at all.
Okay. Well, just a thought on that, Travis. By the time that Crestwood cut-through goes through, they will have improved Pioneer Trail, so that might actually answer that question. Is that probably ought to be a consideration, which I'm sure it would be, when you improve Pioneer Trail through there, to minimize any issues around that. So I don't know. I think the emergency access actually is pretty important here. I mean, we went through this several years ago in a couple of different developments, and I guess I got religion on having that second access, and I think this seems to be minimally acceptable right now and a reasonable approach, but the second access in the long run, I think, is an important addition.
Yeah, I would agree the emergency side. I'm not certain about the long term, what the Crestwood Terrace, if that would be a benefit for the residents that are going to be going in, the new residents going in there. It may be, I don't know, but emergency access definitely. Yeah, I would agree on that. So.
And I would agree with that as well. I think to John's point, it's at that level. It's minimally acceptable at this point, but I don't see a real issue with it. I just want to get back to Jacob. Are you? Well, I guess just the commission in general. Are we comfortable with the 25-foot setback compared to the 30-foot given?
I mean, I'm comfortable with it, okay. But I hear Jake's issue. I know we had the council had basically changed a development where we accepted something like that, and the council said no to it. On this one, I think there's pretty reasonable arguments for doing it, but it's a good thing to talk about.
Yeah, I think Travis brought out some reasonable justifications for doing it. The narrowness, being closer to the lake, and then being closer to Pioneer, I think makes sense here. It's not just purely for convenience or for some other reason. reasons, it's almost like the neighbors are going to have to deal with it themselves. They're just a little closer to each other.
Right.
So
Well, it
you
can
know
almost
that
create
home.
more community, actually.
Yeah.
That's a good point as well. Yeah, I think the circumstances of the development make it pretty justifiable in this case. I want to get back to, are there any other members of the audience that would like to speak to the project, sir? You just state your name and spell your last name and address for a city record.
Same problem with the mics here, I think. Hot to maneuver. My name is Charlie Stone. I live at 9430 Riley Lake Road in Stonegate Development. And I'd first of all like to state that we're very happy with Stonegate Development. Scott did a very nice job. The builders were very, we had choices, and so I think it was well done. I did have a couple of questions and a couple of concerns relative to our Stonegate development that arose during the development that I have a question for Scott for. One of them is will the development be done all in one stage? And the second question then is, is there a holding pond that is part of this development? And if so, are you planning a fountain for the holding pond? Scott knows what my motive is for that question. And then I have a couple other questions that I'd kind of like to address. I'm the current president of the Stonegate Homeowners Association, and it pays well. You know, it's a great job.
Just like us up here.
And we've had a few issues with I think the city. One, we had an individual that built a retaining wall without getting a permit, and that person was in the easement, the water easement, the runoff easement, and it was what we thought clearly a violation of the city codes and whatever. But the city decided that they would not do anything about it. And so it's been a real quandary for the association. And so I'm wondering if in the future, if someone does encroach upon the water runoff easement areas, would the city plan on doing something about it, or is it just the way it is? My second question, and I think one of the questions was answered in reference to the traffic study. There will be a traffic study done. Currently, during the 4th of July, we have cars and trailers parked out in front of our house. And I don't think the people in this new development would like that as well, but there's also nothing that can be done about that. So that's another one of my concerns. And then, well, I think that's about it. I think that was my concerns and my questions for Scott. Again, I would commend Scott. Does a nice job, but there was a few things that were a little thorns in my side as the current president of the association. So,
thank you very much, Mr. Stone.
Sure.
If we have any follow-ups, we'll let you know.
Okay.
Scott, if you want
If I may address Mr. Stone's questions. First of all, I commend Charlie. Charlie was one of the first homeowners in Stonegate, and I love Charlie because he took the association over from me. So thanks for coming, Charlie. And to answer your question, Stonegate was developed, and the last piece of land that I acquired was in the middle of it from Ingram, which is Todd Ingram, and that became Ingram Way. That was kind of an afterthought that he kind of held out and actually came back later to buy in, and that's why that was a second phase. The fountain that Charlie's referring to is something I was really proud of, and that was a fountain when you come down Pioneer Trail. I was really excited. I spent $20,000 and thought, this is really fun. Charlie takes over the association. All of a sudden, he's got neighbors the opposite end of Stonegate complaining that they're paying the electricity bill and they don't get to see it. It made me really sad. It caused an uproar over there about how much each person should be paying. So that's where that came from, and no, I won't be putting a fountain in ever again for that reason, Charlie. The retaining wall was a sore subject. Actually, the city was very good about it. We had a lot of people we had a lot of trees die because they overwatered the Norway pines on the drainage and utility easement areas. That's the same area I was talking about, and the area Charlie's were talking about where that wall was built. it actually killed the trees. They come up with a white fungus on them, and they end up dying. And that was because a gentleman moved into the house, wanted a flat backyard, built railroad ties on his exact property line, covered up the emergency overflow, nowhere for the water to go. And so we were on site many times. And the city's been great. I've met many times on site with city and staff on site. And I think what's happened, Charlie, is they've got to the point of, in my understanding of, how much and how long can they fight with it, and how much money do you want to put into it? And I don't know that for a fact. But the bottom line is he built a flat timber wall into an area that he had no business building into. How that's taken up by the city, I can't answer for that. But he did do it right across the emergency overflow, so water couldn't flow as it's supposed to once it came up to the backyards and through the catch basins. The last thing is the trailer parking. That is something that I hope the city will look at in very serious thought. Charlie's the second house in along Pioneer, so he's very familiar with it. He backs up to the fountain. But my understanding is the whole parking lot is supposed to take, and you guys will be able to answer this better than I, and I'd be curious to know, they have a certain amount of trailers that can park in the parking lot of Lake Riley. When that's full, my understanding was no more boats can go in the lake. And that's the way it should be, because that lake gets so crowded and it's difficult, and they just keep running the trailers right up the road. And that would be something that I think gets involved with Park and Rec. Maybe Stu could talk about it. Maybe I'm wrong, but that was my understanding. Stu?
Stu, go ahead.
As far as Riley Park, we have 15 dedicated parking spaces for vehicles with trailers. And that's actually our regulation, not the DNR. The public launch is open to all and anybody who wants to use it, which means that if you live anywhere and you want to trailer a boat, you have the right to launch the boat there. The only thing we regulate is parking. There is no parking designated along Riley Lake Road. However, Pioneer Trail is, in certain segments, available for parking. And that's certainly the county's doing, not the city's. So, you could launch as many boats as you wanted to, as long as you could physically park them out on Pioneer Trail and you wanted to hoof it back to the park. But there is no regulation.
Thank you, Stu.
Stu, what you're saying is, basically, Mr. Stone wants to mediate this. It would be through the county, essentially.
You would have to meet with the county to plead with the county about posting that as no parking.
Mr. Stone, did you have a follow-up? Or?
And it's in reference to the issue with the city runoff, or the water runoff. We had an engineer from the city come out and tell us that this person was in direct violation of the city code, and that the city would take action to have them move their landscaping. That was, I believe, that was probably April or May of last year. And the development, where the situation is now is that the city has said, no, it's not their responsibility, and that they will do nothing to resolve the issue. And so what our association has done, because we don't have the finances to take a legal action, is we've put this back on the homeowner's lap, which has created a very untenable and unfortunate situation in our neighborhood. So I guess that was why I asked the question, is the city, if you violate what you say you can't build on, is it just say that you can't do it, or is there any action behind it?
So city staff have a response?
I think I know which properties he's referring to, and we've been involved in this situation for upwards of 2 years, I believe. And We've met with both property owners. We've asked to have it removed. In consultation with our city attorney, we've been advised we can't force them legally, but it's been an issue that it's becoming more of a civil matter between the two properties, and it's been an ongoing issue. I'm not privy to all the details, but I know that it's been an issue for a long time, and we have tried to try to resolve the situation the best we can in a kind of a recommendation type role, and because the drainage does go still through there, but he's redirected it somewhat, and it's not a good situation. And at this point, I'm not sure what the next step would be if the property owner refuses to deal with it.
Well, it basically begs a question then as to why wouldn't I build on the easement area, because nothing is done about it. And that's the question I have, and that's the question the homeowners have in the neighborhood, is that, well, then why do we even bother to not build in the easement area?
Well, what I understand from our attorney is that drainage law is a very complicated situation because it's been around for decades or centuries, but property owners cannot change the course of drainage, and this is an easement. It's a swale. It was a graded swale to provide drainage to a structure further to the west, if I'm thinking of the same property we are. And they claim that the water still gets there. We question that, and it's really been a matter of property owners refusing to cooperate, and I think in order to do some of the work, you need permission from the other properties, and they're not working together to try to solve the problem. They're just basically at each other, and without the city getting involved, and it's questionable whether we can get involved, because it's not he did not seek permission. If he was, and I'm not sure exactly where we're going to go with this, but they did not seek permission. But it's not a wall that would have needed a permit, because I don't think it's high enough. It's got to be over 4 foot, and I think it's probably a 3 feet high wall, as I recall. But
I'm not exactly sure. I think it's between 3 and 4 feet, though.
Yeah, so it wouldn't require a permit. So yeah, I think we could talk offline about this.
Yeah, this is not related to this project, but I brought it up strictly to find out whether or not, I know there's going to be swale and water runoff and so on this new property, and I just was hoping that at least it would be adhered to.
Right. Mr. Staunton, assuming this is going to be an ongoing issue, that you don't have any real problems in terms of the current proposal in front of us, Dad. Obviously, you want to ensure that this doesn't happen again.
Right.
But this is something, obviously,
someone else is going to be the president of that association.
Yeah, exactly.
I just don't want them to have as much gray hair as I do. So.
Right, so thank you very much. Are there any other members of the audience that would like to speak in regards to this project? Ma'am, if you'd like to sit up. You just state your name, spell your last name, and say your address for city record.
I'm Judith McCloskey, M-C-K-L-O-S-K-E-Y. I live at 18776 Pines Way. So we can see, we've often wondered what's going to happen to that land. I walk there a lot and drive there a lot, and I'm just very relieved to hear that the road across from Crestwood Terrace won't go through at this time, because despite all the traffic postings, people whip along that curve, both directions, and I just can't visualize cars going onto it at present. So when I came over to City Hall and saw the plan and saw that, that's why I'm here tonight. So I'm relieved that that wouldn't go through unless Pioneer Trail is reworked.
Right.
So that's just my comment.
Great.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the audience who would like to comment? Seeing none. Commissioners, do we have any further questions for city staff or the project proponent? I think we talked through it all. So I think we're all fairly comfortable with it. So that being said, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, move to close the public hearing.
Second. For a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Mr. Chairman, move to recommend approval for the planned unit development concept review on 13.4 acres, planned unit development district review with waivers on 13.4 acres, zoning district change from rural to R1-9.5 on 13.4 acres, preliminary plat of 13.4 acres into 28 lots, 2 outlots, and a road right-of-way based on plan stamp dated November 19th, 2012, and the staff report dated November 21st, 2012.
Second?
Having heard a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. You can continue on with your projects.
Thank you, staff.
Next on the agenda is planners' reports. Regina, do we have any this evening?
Reminder that next meeting is December 10th. Currently, we do not have any public hearings scheduled. Sometimes there's a informational type meeting that could be scheduled, so just stay tuned. Also a reminder that Thursday, November 29th is the last of the public open house and public hearings for light rail. DEIS comments will be here at City Hall. And you do have, as a resident, you do have the opportunity to respond and comment to the DEIS by either mail or email until December 11th, 2012.
Great.
And I think that might be talked about maybe a little more by our light rail representative. Maybe not.
Oh, you put me on the spot. Actually, I really don't have anything to add on with the light rail. Our meeting was actually canceled for November, so there's really not a whole lot of new information that was presented at that meeting. Obviously, they're going through the DEIS comment stage, which this is part of on Thursday as well. So, not too much more to add there. Any other members' reports anybody wants to touch on? How about any continuing business? Any new business?
Mr. Chair, I think I might want to bring something up, and it was in light of some of the residents that were here tonight on the parking of boats and their associated vehicles that transport their trailers. And not sure if there is anything that the city can do, but I know that in the past we put up no parking signs around the city that have been a complicating issue with either businesses that are inundated by people that are parking on the street and impeding the flow of traffic, or residents that are being inundated by the same. And if there is any sort of structure in place presently, or if there have been conversations for future structures that would allow for signage to be placed along these areas, because I'm assuming that the launch at Riley Lake is not isolated. Trying to keep the residents for themselves so that they have their parking availability and don't have an impedance of flow, or their kids having to dodge trailers and stuff. And I don't know if there's any sort of scenario that has been brought forward.
Well, we haven't addressed that, but I mean, we deal with no parking or parking issues, I guess, throughout town, and it's a balance between what the neighborhood wants versus what people are able to park on the road. So we can certainly provide no parking signs or restrictions certain areas, but when we do, it's not selective. You can't say anybody that happens to have a trailer can't park here. If you're going to restrict parking, you restrict parking for everyone, including the residents. For example, if there was a problem out here and we chose to provide no parking, we would generally do a kind of a notice or a survey of the neighborhood and let them know that we're proposing this, and do they agree or not agree with it. I mean, in this case, there could be a section of the road where it's one-sided, where you could probably put no parking on maybe allow parking there versus in front of the residents. But as was mentioned, I mean, you can't be restrictive as to it's only for residents or non-resident parking. So it's one or all. And like around the high school, there is some parking restrictions that are more time-based. So during the day, you can't park between 8 to 3 o'clock or whatever, those type things. But again, that's for everyone in the neighborhood as well. You can't be selective.
That's unfortunate, you can't be selective, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. All right, I don't believe I heard any new business, assuming there's no other comments. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
For a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.
School bus stop arms mean just that. Stop. The flashing amber and red lights are there to warn you. Slow down, stop, and do not pass. Because if those flashing red lights don't get your attention, these will. Please keep our kids safe and yourself ticket-free.